Hi, I'm Mandy McKay. I'm a professional artist and I'm making these videos of creativity tips to help you enhance your creativity regardless of your level of expertise. For this creativity tip, I want to talk about the difference between actions and outcomes and how this would apply to your creative practice. So, an example of actions versus outcomes might be if you've ever set a goal. A lot of people, for example, set a goal that they're going to lose some weight, and their goal might be X number of pounds they're going to lose, and to get there, they're going to cut out junk food, for example. And can you see that there's a difference between these two things? The the actions that the person setting this goal might have some control over, or would have a lot of control over, would be what they're actually eating, and that's giving up the junk food. But the outcome of how much weight to lose is not as much in that person's control. And I think anybody who's ever been on a diet can probably agree with that. You think you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and then you don't lose a single pound, or you lose like 1 pound when you wanted to lose 10. So actions versus outcomes. The actions are things that you more or less have control over, and then the outcomes are what your actual goal might be, but it's something that you don't have as much control over. So an example of that would be if you are, for example, you're working on your creative practice and you're trying to hold yourself to a certain standard, which may or may not be very subjective. But let's say that you're writing poetry, and you have some way that you decide whether or not your poem is good, and you think you did a good job on it or not. And now, of course, so in this case, your action might be that, okay, by the end of this month, you're going to write 5 different poems, for example. And then the outcome would be that these are going to be really good poems that meet whatever your standard is. So if you can see a difference with that, it would probably be a lot easier for you to write those 5 poems than for them to necessarily be really what you consider to be really, really good poems, especially if you're just starting out. So that would be something to keep in mind, because people, especially in the early stages, tend to get really discouraged if they're not meeting some standard. But if you are very new to something, I mean, yes, the outcome of it being a good poem would be somewhat within your control, but the action of writing 5 poems is a lot more within your control. And that probably would be the thing to focus on more. Obviously, you want your poems to be as good as possible, but practice makes perfect, of course. So if you're just focused on, okay, I'm going to write these poems, and I mean, I'm going to try to do a good job, but I'm not going to be discouraged if I write that first poem and I don't think it's really as good as I want it to be. Now, this also would apply to coming up with different creative ideas. In a lot of my videos, I just encourage people to practice coming up with ideas, because that is, again, practice makes perfect. And the more you practice thinking about ideas, what you're going to do, just generating ideas and becoming more and more able to do that regardless of circumstances, that's something I encourage. But again, you might come up with 20 ideas in a row and not think any of them are any good. So again, that's the action of coming up with ideas that you might be able to use in your creative practice versus, are any of them actually usable? So just remembering the actions versus outcomes, I think, will help you not get discouraged in the early stages. Now, what if you're in you're a more advanced, like I am as a professional artist? I'm predominantly an oil painter. And I've sold quite a few paintings, but I do not sell every painting, even if I think that painting is great. So this would be an example for the more advanced person in their creative practice. Would be, okay, I might decide I'm going to paint X number of paintings this year or this month, whatever. And of course, I would like to sell all of them, but that's probably not going to happen, at least not unless I have like really, really crazy low prices, which I definitely don't want to undervalue my work. So I have control over, to some degree, depending on if I'm sick or there's some family emergency or something, I do have some control over sitting down and actually painting something. And then I have a lot less control over the outcome of selling that painting. So actions versus outcomes, it really is something to think about, and I think that is helpful to stop people from being discouraged, whether they're just starting out with a hobby or if they're on the professional level with their creative practice. So definitely just remember the difference between the two, and hopefully that will help you keep going. If you are feeling a little bit discouraged, that you'll remember that some things really are out of your control at this point, and just the focusing on the actions is something that's going to get you closer to the outcome that you want eventually. So let me know in the comments if you've experienced anything like this, or if this, what you think about this tip in general as applying it to creativity. I do hope that you found this video to be helpful. And again, my name is Manda McKay, and thank you so much for watching.